Hello friends, welcome back to Kantika Horror Stories. In today's video, I have a spine-chilling story that will send shivers down your spine. So don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest horror stories on this channel. Now, let's get started. At the foot of Mount Merapi, there was a small village named Jagasuria. The village was surrounded by dense forests and often shrouded in thick mist, especially at night. Its inhabitants lived simply, mostly as farmers and livestock breeders. However, there was one figure who was both revered and feared in the village, Ki Jagaraga, a powerful shaman said to possess rare knowledge passed down through generations. Ki Jagaraga was no ordinary man. It was said that he could communicate with spirits, heal illnesses with secret potions, and even control the forces of nature. His house stood at the edge of the forest, slightly separated from the village. Many people came to him for help, whether for good or for darker requests. That night, the mist was thicker than usual. The moon was barely visible behind the clouds. Inside his house, Ki Jagaraga sat cross-legged in the middle of the room. In front of him, a ritual bowl filled with water that rippled despite being untouched. His eyes were closed, lips murmuring incantations. The scent of burning incense filled the air, creating an oppressive, mystical atmosphere. Suddenly, a knock sounded on his wooden door, soft yet firm. Ki Jagaraga slowly opened his eyes. He sensed something unusual. This was no ordinary visitor. "Come in," his deep voice resonated. The door creaked open, revealing a young man with a pale face. His clothes were tattered, his breath ragged. It was Raksa, a village youth known for his diligence and intelligence. But tonight, his face was filled with terror. "Ki, I need your help," Raksa's voice trembled. Ki Jagaraga stared at him intently. His piercing eyes seemed to penetrate the soul of anyone before him. "What did you see?" he asked, calm but probing. Raksa swallowed hard. His hands trembled as he pointed toward the forest behind the shaman's house. "I saw them, Kai, black shadows, and they called my name." The room instantly grew colder. Ki Jagaraga took a deep breath. He knew this was no ordinary night, and what Raksa had just said was only the beginning of something far more terrifying. The silence that followed Raksa's words was thick and suffocating. Ki Jagaraga took a deep breath and stood up, his movements slow but deliberate. He reached for a wooden staff resting against the wall and gestured for Raksa to sit. "Tell me everything," he commanded. Raksa hesitated before speaking. His voice was hushed, as if afraid that something lurking in the darkness might overhear. "I was returning from the river when I felt it, eyes watching me. The mist grew thicker and, suddenly, I saw them, dark figures standing between the trees. They had no faces, but I knew they were staring at me. Then, they whispered my name." Ki Jagaraga tightened his grip on his staff. He had heard of such things before, but it had been years since they last appeared. "Did you respond to them?" he asked gravely. Raksa shook his head violently. "No, Ki. I ran as fast as I could. Even then, I could still hear them, whispering, calling me." Ki Jagaraga closed his eyes briefly, muttering something under his breath. When he opened them again, there was a new intensity in his gaze. "They have marked you," he said, "and they will not stop until they get what they want." Raksa felt his stomach drop. "What do they want, Ki?" The shaman looked towards the forest, his expression unreadable. "A debt must be paid, and if it is not yours, it belongs to someone else." Raksa felt his blood run cold. "A debt? What kind of debt, Ki?" Ki Jagaraga tapped his staff on the wooden floor, his gaze fixed beyond the misty horizon. This village was built upon a pact, one that was made long before you or I were born. The spirits you saw, they are the watchers of that pact. They come to collect what is owed. Raksa swallowed hard, his hands gripping his knees. But I have never made any deal with them. Why are they calling my name? The shaman sighed. Because the sins of the ancestors do not die with them. If a debt remains unpaid, it is passed down to the next bloodline. He paused, then added, "Tell me, Raksa, have you ever heard of your great-grandfather, Suparman?" Raksa frowned, shaking his head. "Number, my father never spoke of him." Ki Jagaraga's expression darkened. "That is because Suparman was the one who made the pact. And now, it is your turn to face the consequences." Outside, the wind howled through the trees, and from the depths of the forest, an eerie whisper floated through the mist. Raksa shuddered. The spirits had not left. They were waiting. Raksa clenched his fists. "There must be a way to break the pact, Kai. I don't want to be part of this curse." Ki Jagaraga's gaze remained steady. "Breaking such a pact is not simple. If it were, your ancestors would have done so long ago. There is a ritual, but it is dangerous, and if done incorrectly, it may only worsen the spirit's wrath." Raksa hesitated. The weight of his great-grandfather's actions pressed heavily on his shoulders. "What do I need to do?" The shaman stood up and reached for a bundle of age scrolls from a wooden chest. "You must retrieve an item that belonged to Suparman, his dagger. It was buried with him in the old cemetery at the edge of the forest." Raksa's heart pounded. The cemetery had been abandoned for years, said to be cursed by the villagers. No one dared to go near it after sunset. "Go before nightfall," Ki Jagaraga warned, "and whatever happens, do not listen to the whispers. They will try to deceive you." Raksa took a deep breath. The journey to the cemetery would be his first test, and he had no choice but to face it. Raksa stepped into the overgrown cemetery, his heart pounding like a war drum. The mist coiled around the headstones, obscuring his vision. Holding a torch tightly in his grasp, he moved forward, scanning the names etched onto the gravestones. A sudden gust of wind sent a shiver down his spine. Then, a whisper slithered through the trees. "Raksa!" His breath hitched. He forced himself to move faster. Finally, he found it. Suparman's grave, the stone cracked and covered in moss. Taking a deep breath, he knelt and began digging. Each handful of dirt felt heavier than the last. Then, his fingers brushed against something cold. Metal. The dagger. But before he could pull it free, the earth beneath him trembled, and the shadows around him began to move. The ground beneath Raksa trembled as dark mist seeped from the earth, coiling around his legs. A deep whisper, almost a growl, echoed in his ears. "Suparman, your blood repays the debt." Raksa's breath hitched as he yanked the dagger free from the grave. The metal felt unnaturally cold in his grip, pulsing with an energy that sent shivers through his body. The shadows around him twisted, forming indistinct figures with hollow eyes. They did not attack, but rather watched, waiting. "Ki Jagaraga!" Raksa cried out, gripping the dagger tighter. "What do I do?" Suddenly, a powerful gust of wind tore through the cemetery, parting the mist. Ki Jagaraga emerged from the darkness, his staff glowing faintly with a golden light. "Hold steady, Raksa! Do not let them take you!" the shaman bellowed. He raised his staff, drawing symbols in the air that shimmered briefly before fading. The spirits recoiled slightly, but did not disappear. Raksa's heart pounded. He could feel an unnatural pull within him, as if the dagger had bound him to something far beyond his understanding. "The dagger is the key," Ki Jagaraga said, his voice firm. "But its power must be wielded with wisdom." If you fail, the pact will claim you instead. The ground cracked beneath them, and the spirit surged forward. Raksa gritted his teeth. There was no turning back now. Raksa gripped the dagger tightly, feeling its cold metal pulsate in his palm. The spirits surged forward, their whispers growing into a deafening chorus that threatened to drown his thoughts. Raksa, the dagger is not just a weapon, it is a seal. Ki Jagaraga's voice boomed over the wailing spirits. You must command it. Raksa's breath was ragged. His body trembled, but he steadied himself. He closed his eyes, reaching deep into his instincts. The dagger in his hands began to glow with a faint, eerie light. The spirits hesitated, their forms flickering as if uncertain. Focus. Speak the name of the one who made the pact, Ki Jagaraga urged. Raksa swallowed hard and shouted, Suparman! The moment the name left his lips, a violent gust of wind erupted from the dagger. The spirits let out shrill cries as they were forced back, writhing in agony. The mist thickened, swirling around Raksa and Ki Jagaraga like a storm contained within the graveyard. Then, from the center of the storm, a figure began to emerge, a silhouette of a man, his eyes hollow, his presence suffocating. Raksa gasped. Is that my great-grandfather? Ki Jagaraga narrowed his eyes. His soul lingers between worlds. This is the moment of truth. If you do not act now, the pact will never be broken. Raksa tightened his grip on the dagger. This was his test. This was the moment to either set his family free or be lost to the spirits forever. Raksa's heart pounded as he locked eyes with the spectral figure of Suparman. The air around him grew heavy, thick with the weight of the past. The spirits continued to howl, their wails echoing through the graveyard like a sorrowful chorus of the damned. Suparman! Raksa called again, his voice firm despite his fear. Your debt must be repaid. Release us from this curse. The ghostly figure of Suparman raised a translucent hand, his hollow eyes filled with an unreadable emotion. His lips moved, but no words came out, only a chilling wind that sent shivers through Raksa's spine. Ki Jagaraga stepped forward, planting his staff into the ground. Raksa, listen to me. You hold the key to undoing this. The dagger is bound to the pact, but only through sacrifice can the cycle be broken. Raksa hesitated. Sacrifice? What do you mean? Suparman's form flickered, his body writhing as if struggling against unseen chains. A deep, guttural voice finally escaped his lips. Blood must be given. Raksa's fingers clenched around the dagger. The realization struck him. Either he must spill his own blood, or offer something of equal value. His family's freedom depended on his choice. Ki Jagaraga's voice was solemn. You must decide now, Raksa. The spirits will not wait forever. The dagger pulsed, demanding resolution. The spirits in the mist edged closer, their whispers intensifying. Raksa took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would decide the fate of his lineage. He lifted the dagger and made his choice. Raksa's grip tightened on the dagger, his breath shallow. The spirits loomed closer, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. Ki Jagaraga watched in silence, waiting for the boy's decision. With a deep breath, Raksa turned the blade toward his palm. He winced as the sharp edge sliced through his skin, and warm blood trickled onto the dagger's surface. The moment the first drop hit the blade, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. Suparman's ghost let out an unearthly cry, his form flickering violently. The spirits recoiled as the dagger absorbed the blood, its glow intensifying. The mist around them began to swirl wildly, drawn toward the weapon. It is done, Ki Jagaraga murmured, his voice barely audible over the wailing spirits. Raksa felt a strange pull in his chest, as if something unseen was being extracted from him. The dagger grew heavier in his grasp, its energy overwhelming. Then, as suddenly as it had started, the chaos ceased. The spirits faded into the darkness, their whispers silenced. Suparman's ghost lingered a moment longer. His hollow eyes met Raksa's one final time before he dissolved into the night, leaving only an eerie stillness in his wake. Raksa collapsed to his knees, exhaustion washing over him. Ki Jagaraga placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have broken the pact, but the scars of the past will always remain." Raksa looked up at the elder, determination shining through his weariness. "Then, I will make sure history never repeats itself." The night was quiet once more, but Raksa knew his journey was far from over. The dawn broke over the village of Jagasurya, casting golden light over the misty fields. Raksa sat outside Ki Jagaraga's hut, his mind restless despite the calm morning. The events of the previous night still weighed heavily on him. "You should rest," Ki Jagaraga said as he stepped out leaning on his staff. "Your body may be free from the spirits, but your soul is still burdened." Raksa exhaled slowly. "I know, Kai, but I keep wondering, what if this isn't over? What if something else comes for me?" The old shaman nodded gravely. "Breaking the pact was only the first step. The spirits have been appeased, but dark forces do not simply disappear. They linger, waiting for another opportunity." Raksa clenched his fists. "Then, I need to be ready. I don't want to be caught off guard again." Ki Jagaraga studied him for a moment before speaking. "There is a way, but it will not be easy. If you truly wish to protect yourself and this village, you must understand the full extent of the forces at play." "Teach me," Raksa said without hesitation. "Teach me how to fight them." A faint smile touched the shaman's lips. "Very well, but be warned. Knowledge is a double-edged sword. What you learn may change you forever." As the sun rose higher, Raksa knew that his journey was far from over. The spirits may have been banished, but something deeper, something darker was waiting in the shadows. The air inside Ki Jagaraga's hut was thick with the scent of burning herbs. Strange symbols were drawn on the floor, glowing faintly under the dim candlelight. Raksa sat cross-legged, his eyes fixed on the shaman, who stood before him holding a bowl filled with dark liquid. "To fight the darkness, you must first understand it," Ki Jagaraga began. "This potion will open your mind to the unseen. It will show you what lurks beyond the veil." Raksa hesitated, staring at the murky liquid. "What will I see?" The shaman's eyes gleamed. Memories, echoes of the past, and perhaps glimpses of what is yet to come. Swallowing his fear, Raksa took the bowl and drank deeply. The taste was bitter, earthy, and almost metallic. Almost instantly, his vision blurred, and the room around him melted away. He found himself standing in a vast, shadowy landscape. Figures moved in the darkness, some familiar, others monstrous. Then, a towering figure emerged from the gloom. It was cloaked in black mist, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. "Who are you?" Raksa whispered, his voice barely audible. A deep, guttural voice echoed in response. "I have waited for you, blood of Suparman. The pact was broken, but the debt remains." Raksa's heart pounded. The figure stepped closer, and with it came a wave of unbearable cold. He tried to move, but his body was frozen in place. "You are not ready," the voice continued, "but you will be soon." With a sudden force, Raksa was yanked back into reality. He gasped, his body drenched in sweat. Ki Jagaraga watched him closely. "What did you see?" the shaman asked. Raksa struggled to catch his breath. Something is still waiting for me, and it's not finished yet." Ki Jagaraga nodded solemnly. "Then we must prepare you. The true battle is yet to come." The night air was thick with tension. Raksa sat by the fire outside Ki Jagaraga's hut, staring into the flickering flames. The vision still haunted him. The shadowy figure, the chilling voice, the ominous warning. He clenched his fists. He had broken the pact, but the battle was far from over. Ki Jagaraga emerged from the hut, carrying a bundle of old scrolls. He unrolled one and placed it before Raksa. This is the knowledge passed down by those who came before us. You must learn to control your fear and wield the power within you. Raksa hesitated, his eyes scanning the ancient markings. What kind of power? The shaman's gaze was steady. Protection, strength, and the ability to walk between realms. But it will demand more from you than you can imagine. A sudden gust of wind rustled the trees, and Raksa felt an unnatural chill seep into his bones. The darkness beyond the fire seemed to shift, moving with a will of its own. They are watching, Ki Jagaraga murmured. The spirits do not take kindly to those who defy them. We must act quickly. Raksa swallowed hard. What do we do? The old shaman placed a hand on Raksa's shoulder. We prepare. Tomorrow night, we summon the spirits and force them to reveal their true purpose. But be warned, once we open that door, there is no turning back. The flames crackled, casting long shadows across Raksa's face. He knew there was no choice. The storm was coming and he had to be ready. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the village. Raksa stood at the edge of the sacred clearing, his heart pounding. The night of the ritual had arrived. In the center of the clearing, Ki Jagaraga arranged ritual stones in a perfect circle, muttering ancient incantations under his breath. Once we begin, there is no stopping until the spirits have spoken, the shaman warned, his eyes glinting in the dim torchlight. Are you ready? Raksa took a deep breath and nodded. I have to be. Ki Jagaraga handed him a small bowl filled with a thick, dark liquid. Drink this. It will open your senses to the realm beyond. But beware, what you see may not be what it seems. Raksa hesitated only for a moment before lifting the bowl to his lips. The liquid burned as it went down, and almost instantly, the world around him shifted. The air grew dense, and the trees swayed as if whispering secrets to unseen forces. A gust of wind extinguished the torches, plunging the clearing into darkness. Then, a voice, a deep, guttural whisper, emerged from the void. Why have you summoned us? Raksa shivered, gripping his dagger tightly. I seek the truth. What is the debt that binds my bloodline? The shadows stirred, coiling like serpents. From within them, a figure materialized. A twisted, elongated shape with hollow eyes that gleamed with malevolence. Your ancestor stole from us, the entity hissed. A power not meant for mortals. And now the price must be paid. Ki Jagaraga tightened his grip on his staff. What must be done to end this curse? The spirit let out a low, echoing laugh. The answer lies within the blood. One must be given, or the darkness will consume all. Raksa's blood ran cold. A sacrifice. But whose blood would it be? The spirits awaited his answer. Silence stretched across the clearing, thick and suffocating. The spirits waited, their hollow eyes fixed on Raksa. The weight of their demand pressed down on him like a boulder. One must be given. Ki Jagaraga's voice was steady, but grim. There is always a way, Raksa, but the choice must be yours. Raksa's hands trembled as he tightened his grip on the dagger. He could feel the eyes of his ancestors watching, judging. Could he truly sacrifice another to save himself and his village? Or was there another way? What if I offer my own blood? Raksa asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The shadows stirred, a collective hiss rippling through them. The spirit's twisted form leaned forward. A noble offering, but not enough. The debt is greater than one life alone. Raksa clenched his jaw. He would not condemn another to this fate. Then take me, take my soul, my essence. Let the curse end with me. Ki Jagaraga's eyes widened. Raksa, no! There must be another way. But the spirits laughed, a sound like rustling leaves and cracking bones. A willing sacrifice, rare indeed. Very well, mortal. If you surrender yourself, the pact will be fulfilled. The shadows closed in, coiling around Raksa like a living entity. Cold seeped into his bones as an unseen force began pulling him into the darkness. Then, just as his vision blurred, Ki Jagaraga slammed his staff into the ground. A golden light erupted from the earth, piercing through the spirits. No! I will not allow another soul to be lost, he roared. The spirit screeched, recoiling from the light. The ground trembled beneath them as the shaman chanted in an ancient tongue, his voice growing louder with each word. Raksa gasped, feeling the force pulling him weaken. The spirit shrieked. This is not over, Shaman. The debt remains. A final surge of energy exploded from Ki Jagaraga's staff, scattering the spirits like dust in the wind. The clearing fell silent once more. Raksa collapsed to his knees, breathless. The shadows had vanished, but for how long? Ki Jagaraga knelt beside him. The battle is won, but the war is not over. We must prepare for what comes next. Raksa swallowed hard, staring at the sky. He had escaped death tonight, but the darkness had not been defeated. Not yet. The air in the clearing was heavy with the remnants of energy left behind by the spirits. The ground still held faint traces of Ki Jagaraga's golden light, but the darkness that had been repelled left an eerie stillness in its wake. Raksa sat with his back against a tree, his body weak from the ordeal. His breathing was uneven, and his mind raced with the memories of what had just transpired. He had almost given himself to the spirits, and even now he could still hear their whispers lingering at the edge of his consciousness. Ki Jagaraga watched him carefully. You are lucky to be alive, Raksa, but this battle is not yet over. The spirits have been cast away, but they will return. The debt is still there, waiting to be fully settled. Raksa ran a hand through his damp hair. Then, what do we do? If they keep coming back, how do we end this once and for all? The old shaman exhaled slowly. We must find the source of the pact. The root of the curse does not lie with you alone, but with the actions of your ancestors. There is something more that has been hidden, something they have not told us. Raksa's brow furrowed. You mean someone has been keeping secrets? Ki Jagaraga nodded. Your great-grandfather, Suparman, may not have acted alone. If we are to truly break this curse, we must seek the truth, before the spirits grow too strong to be stopped. A gust of wind rustled the trees, and for a brief moment, Raksa felt eyes watching him from the darkness once more. He shivered, knowing that their time was running out. Then, we have no choice, Raksa said, determination burning in his eyes. We must uncover the past before it's too late. Ki Jagaraga placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Rest now, Raksa. Tomorrow we begin our search. Their answers await us in the forgotten places of this land. As the fire crackled beside them, Raksa knew that the true battle was only beginning. Morning broke over the village of Jagasuria, casting long shadows over the damp earth. Raksa awoke with a start, the echoes of the spirits' whispers still faintly ringing in his ears. Today, their search for the truth would begin. Ki Jagaraga was already preparing supplies when Raksa emerged from the hut. We leave for the old temple in the eastern jungle, the shaman announced. It is one of the last places where Suparman's presence lingers. If there are answers to be found, they will be there. Raksa swallowed his unease and nodded. The journey would not be easy. The temple had been abandoned for decades, swallowed by the forest, rumoured to be cursed by those who dared to approach. By midday, they reached the jungle's edge. The air grew dense, heavy with moisture and the scent of moss. The deeper they walked, the quieter the world became. Even the birds seemed to fear this place. "We are being watched," Ki Jagaraga muttered, his grip tightening around his staff. Raksa could feel it too, a presence lingering just beyond sight, hidden in the shadows between the trees. Then, suddenly, the jungle parted before them, revealing the ruins of an ancient temple. Vines crawled over the stone, and the carvings of forgotten deities stared down at them from the walls. Raksa stepped forward, his voice hushed. "This is where it all began, isn't it?" Ki Jagaraga nodded solemnly. "And if we are not careful, this is where it could all end." A chilling breeze swept through the ruins, carrying with it the faintest sound of laughter, cold, hollow, and familiar. The past was waiting. The ruins loomed before them, ancient and foreboding. Raksa took a cautious step forward, his breath shallow as he scanned the overgrown stones. Ki Jagaraga followed close behind, his grip firm on his staff. "Be careful, Raksa," the shaman warned. "The spirits here have been undisturbed for too long. They do not take kindly to intruders." Raksa swallowed and pressed on, his fingers grazing the cold surface of a carved pillar. The markings were faded, but something about them felt eerily familiar. Then, as if sensing his touch, the ground beneath them trembled. A low hum resonated through the temple ruins. Shadows danced across the walls, shifting unnaturally. The laughter Raksa had heard before grew louder, curling through the air like an unseen serpent. "You have come far, child of Suparman," a voice echoed deep and resonant. "But are you prepared to face what your bloodline has buried?" Raksa's pulse quickened. From the darkness of the temple's inner sanctum, a figure emerged. Cloaked in shadows, its eyes gleamed like embers. "Who are you?" Raksa demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The figure took another step forward. "I am the guardian of this secret, the keeper of the debt your ancestors failed to repay. And now, it is time you fulfill your fate." Ki Jagaraga raised his staff. "We did not come to surrender to the past. We came to end this curse." The ruins shuddered as the entity let out a guttural chuckle. "Then prove your worth, Shaman. Let us see if you are strong enough to defy destiny." A gust of wind howled through the temple, and the battle for Raksa's future began. The temple walls shook violently as Raksa and Ki Jagaraga braced themselves against the swirling darkness. The Guardian's presence grew heavier, pressing against them like an unseen force. The air crackled with energy, thick with ancient power. "You cannot escape fate, child of Suparman," the Guardian intoned, its voice reverberating through the ruins. "The debt must be repaid, and the bloodline must answer." Raksa's grip tightened around his dagger. "I refuse to be bound by a past I did not create." The Guardian's eyes flared, and with a wave of its hand, tendrils of shadow lunged toward them. Ki Jagaraga struck the ground with his staff, sending a burst of golden light outward, repelling the attack. "Raksa, listen to me! The curse is tied to the pact made by your ancestors. You must sever it at its source," the shaman shouted over the raging winds. Raksa's mind raced. "The pact! The dagger!" His eyes widened. He looked down at the blade in his hands, realizing its true purpose. The Guardian lunged, its massive form blotting out the light. Raksa, driven by newfound clarity, raised the dagger high above his head. "With this, I break the chains of the past." A piercing scream echoed through the ruins as he plunged the dagger into the temple floor. A brilliant explosion of energy erupted from the impact, sending waves of light rippling outward. The shadows convulsed, writhing in agony before dissolving into nothingness. The ground stilled. The oppressive darkness lifted. Raksa collapsed, gasping for breath. Ki Jagaraga knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "It is done, Raksa. The curse is broken." The ruins, once a place of dread, now stood silent. The spirits had been laid to rest. Raksa stared at the dagger, its glow fading. He had done it. The burden of his ancestors had finally been lifted. But deep within the jungle, unseen and unheard, something stirred. A new beginning, or a new threat.